I'm very excited. And this is one of the last events, one of the last activities of the exhibition, Domestic Geographies, and curated by Ingrid Hernandez. Okay, so my name is Francisco Morales. I am the gallery director at the Front Arte Cultura. The Front Arte Cultura, it's a gallery located 1 mile away from the international border of Tijuana and San Diego. Tijuana, Mexico, and San Diego, USA. We are right in the heart of San Isidro, which belongs to the city of San Diego. The gallery is part of a big organization called Casa Familiar. It's a nonprofit organization working in community development, social services, and arts and culture. The Front Arte Cultura has been active for 15 years. We're going to be celebrating our 15th anniversary this October. And this exhibition, the International Women's Day exhibition, or the Día de la Mujer exhibition, is going to be 15 years also in 2022. So this year is the 14th edition of this exhibition. The exhibition has become a tradition, not only in San Isidro, but in the region, Tijuana, San Diego, highlighting the work of women artists and sharing, bringing a space for them to talk about issues relevant to womanhood, to the body, to violence, to discrimination, and all kinds of subjects and themes. Every year there's a different curator taking the lead on the exhibition. And this year we are pretty excited and very happy with the curator, the guest curator, Ingrid Hernandez. Ingrid Hernandez, an artist and curator from Tijuana, Mexico, has done a tremendous job curating the exhibition and also inviting other artists that are curating activities such as Itzel Martinez del Cañizo, who curated a film program, and Carla Guiniga, in this case, that she's going to talk in just a couple of minutes. So the work of this year's work has been especially important, especially also difficult, of course, because of the pandemic. We wanted to not only make the exhibition as we do it every year, but we also wanted to extend our reach and, of course, do some activities online. But that also opened a lot of possibilities, such as this conversation and this program curated by Carla Guiniga. So it's a lot of artists for this exhibition, because of the border restrictions, couldn't cross and couldn't come to the gallery as they usually do because of the pandemic, of course. So we received a lot of the pieces by mail, by postal mail. And in general, the whole exhibition became more complex. So it was a challenge for everybody, and we are very proud, very happy with the results. We have had, as we are slowly reopening at the gallery, we have had also people visiting the exhibition. We have had virtual tours. We have had conversations and online activities as well. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Carla.
to start first. I'm Carla Zúñiga. So first, I just want to start the conversation by honoring the ancestors on the land on which I'm currently speaking to you from. So I recognize that I am on stolen land taken as part of the 286th and 308th succession. I'm a visitor in the ancestor homeland of the Tunva, Kish, and the Shumash, and I stand in solidarity with Indigenous land reclamation and sovereignty. And I want to dedicate today's conversation to Julia Bagani, Tunva elder, who transitioned to the afterlife less than a month ago, who was crucial in fighting for the recognition of the Tunva as a federally recognized tribe. I also want to thank the 4 elements that gave us the life for us to be here on today, Earth Day. So I want to thank Earth, I want to thank the water, I want to thank the fire, I want to thank the wind, and for all of you for being here, and also for your ancestors. And I got my shot today, so we definitely need those ancestors, a little extra energy. So big thanks to Francisco for obviously creating the space for us to gather here, and also to Ingrid for creating this exhibition and for inviting me to be a part of the show. And so the exhibition is called Domestic Geographies, which is the reason why we're all here. So secondly, I want to start with today's schedule. So I've introduced myself, then I'll introduce the artist, their work, and then we can have a little conversation about their work. And first, I just want to kind of remind everyone about the program if you have not read the little text that I wrote, and I've put in the chat if you want to see the program at a later time. So Embodying the Invisible is a selection of 5 works which are centered on the subject of invisible labor. Invisible labor is work performed by a subject that is not monetarily compensated, and that is labor that becomes unnoticed and thus unregulated. And invisible labor is often work centered in the domestic space and is an essential mechanism for social, emotional, and physical health that goes unrecognized. Duties such as the care of others, cleaning, preparing foods often fall on women. And secondly, undocumented workers who perform different kinds of invisible labor. Their work might be compensated, but it is invisible in the eyes of the law. And undocumented workers are unprotected by labor law, thus leaving them vulnerable to hazardous working condition, unfair labor practices, and wage theft. And the intention of this film selection is to recognize and acknowledge invisible labor, to notice it, to sit with it, to engage in it, and to see what shape, skin, or body it takes. And again, this selection is available until the end of the weekend, and you can see it at home. And I really hope you enjoy it. So again, the link is in the chat, and the exhibition at the front is available to visit until May 7th if you want to see it in person. And again, congratulations, Ingrid, for this amazing show, which got like 80 something submissions from all around the world. And there was work that was like mailed in from all around the world, which is really amazing to see that great effort. So on to the artist. I'm going to start with Sophia. So Sophia is a filmmaker and artist born and raised in Los Angeles. She holds a BFA in film and video and an MFA in experimental sound practices from CalArts. And her work lovingly explores familial narratives and images through wide eyes and open ears. Her work has been shown at Slam Dance Film Festival, Morelia Film Festival, the La Plaza de Cultura en las Artes, and the Mexican Center for Cinematic Arts. So I was thinking that we would see a little bit of Sophia's film, and then she can talk about the piece, and then I'll introduce Sherry and Irene, and we can do the same, and then we can kind of just enter into a discussion. So first, I just want to show a little bit of Sophia's work. I'm gonna fast forward to this other little piece.
Estará bien así. Me falta un poquitito. Porque de atrás. Why you laugh? Because it sounded so bad. Well, well, yeah, but then I can feel like in the kitchen. Okay, let's do it again.
All right, Sophia, take it away.
I made that film almost 10 years ago now, so it's kind of interesting to be watching it again. I feel very much what Carla said in her introduction. My mother herself was a housekeeper for almost 10 years in a house, and then for no reason, when she asked for a raise, was accused of stealing and was fired. And that made me unstable as a college student when I was in university. And I made this film. That was probably the last time that I had any sort of security and I was able to make work. And it has been a very big struggle since then to try and stay prolific. And I have not been prolific because of that. But my mother was very sick around this time, and I wanted to make a film that involved all of the women that were living in the family at the time. So it was multi generational. My grandmother, my sister, and me. And there are men in the house, but when I think of home, I don't really see them in the house for some reason. And I was inspired by work like The Exiles by Kent Mackenzie and Fever Dream by Chick Strand. And I wanted to make a film that was compelling and warm and affectionate, both in content and form. So that's why my camera is always really close to the subject. It's very blurry, it goes in and out of focus, but I kind of just wanted the film to do its thing. I wanted the light to spill over and be overexposed, and I wanted the grain to be too grainy and go in and out of that. I don't like having too much control over my image when I'm filming on 16 millimeter, for example. So I felt I was very successful in achieving a sort of dreamscape. It elevated this domestic, everyday space to something more in the clouds. And more simply, the film was narratively the one chance that these women got time to take care of themselves and make a meal only for themselves and not for the whole household, which would have included the men who sort of just nebulously inhabit it and come when there's food and then leave when there's no food. I don't know if I should get into this now, but these days I'm doing more animation because once I graduated school, I had no more access to cameras, but I did have access to paper and pencil. So I started animating again. Even though I've changed mediums, I'm still threading these domestic narratives in my head, and I'm working on a short film that is still really rooted in a sort of prison and also a place of healing. So I'm excited to see what my animations come out with because I'm still applying the same sort of sensibilities with which I made this film almost 10 years ago. So I hope everybody does get a chance to see it on headphones too, because the soundtrack is very important. I don't think there's one moment of silence in the film, and I mean, that's how it is when you're at grandma's house, right? There's like all your cousins and your aunts, and you're trying to sleep, but you can't. So I tried making the soundtrack sort of like that. It's like no chance for silence or privacy. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. I think in the film it's a good thing. That's all I have to say, I think. Until later, if there are questions, I can answer more.
Yeah, and I've shown this film before. Sophia was in a show that I curated a while ago at the Mexican consulate a few years ago. And I was like, when Ingrid was telling me about the show and sort of what she wanted, I was like, I have to absolutely show Sophia's piece because it's just like really amazing just to see this interaction between the women, and also sort of these tensions of like these moments of tenderness that kind of, if you go on it, like it could be like this weird sensuality that it's like a territory that's like obviously not where you want to go, but like that tenderness of like the touch and just like feeling like the soundtrack is really lovely because you really feel like you're there, and it feels, yeah, really intentional. But I remember that just like it's a piece that resonated with me. So I was like, okay, we absolutely have to show Sophia's piece. And the rest of the other artists, I didn't actually know. It was more of like research of how I came up with that work. But I think Sophia's piece for me was kind of like the very literal, like that invisible labor that, you know, a lot of us might perform, of just like taking care of someone that like we don't get paid for, right? Like your grandma's doing this work, like your mom, like, you know, they're dressing each other, and it's just like a really tender, loving like moment. But there's also like, I just, yeah, wondered like what it was like for you to be working with your family as characters rather than like in your animations, they're like other characters, right?
Yeah. Well, my family is making their way into my animation in one way or another, but this time I get to direct them more literally because I'm drawing them. Um, yeah, that tenderness you speak of, um, it's like this still in real life, and it was like this when I filmed. It's this fine line between doing something because you love them and also because it's an obligation. And that's actually a really big burden to carry in your heart. Um, so I I would had kind of a wish list of shots. I storyboarded loosely, and I would come in, and it depended on their moods. I didn't have any sort of pickup shoot, so I kind of just threw myself at the deep end with my camera and my lights, and see how they felt. The bath scene was really difficult because my mom wasn't feeling well that day. And then they also were all three of them too prudish to take their bras off. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna film you guys bathing each other with bras. But I guess um, in hindsight, that's okay because even though we're all women and family, they're still putting boundaries up between each other, which became a point of conversation that I never intended of putting into the film. Um, so yeah, it's a weird, um, thin, strange veil of I love you, but uh, we're still private, individual people. um, the sound, I had ideas for the sound sometimes before I had ideas for the images. Um, I watched Lucrecia Martel's Holy Girl beforehand, and I think her sound design is so masterful. Um, and I liked the feeling I got from it, being able to close my eyes and feel immersed in it, but also know that the sound is very far away. So when I was designing the sound, I kind of wanted to replicate that feeling of throwing the viewer into the middle of all of it, but also keeping them at bay and as a spectator. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Maybe we could just do a virtual claps to Sophia, like just emojis or
Yeah.
sweet. Okay, so on to Sherry. So Sherry is a 25-year-old artist born in Xiang'an, China, and she currently lives and works in Chicago. She holds a bachelor's degree in English literature from the College of William and Mary and a BFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And she has shown her work at Chicago Cultural Center, Museum of Contemporary Photography, Lynx Hall, Mana Contemporary, and she has been an artist in residence at Acre Contemporary Calgary Museum and a visiting artist at Emory University. And her films have been screened at Satellite Art Show, Helena Anrath Gallery, Heaven Gallery, Virginia Commonwealth University, and she is the awardee of the 2020 Cala Art Institute Media Award Fellowship. And she's going to be an artist in resident at Yaddo Foundation in 2021. So I'm going to show a little bit of Sherry's film in a minute. Give me a minute to pull it up.
My name is Matthew. My friends call me Mateo. I'm a maintenance worker at a condominium building here in downtown Chicago. One day, I was outside cleaning the building windows. Sherry approached me and asked if she could film me work. I thought, why the hell not?
While he was washing the windows, Matthew asked me about what I do. I felt like I didn't do a good job explaining to him on the spot. Afterwards, I realized that maybe the only way that I could explain to Matthew about what I do is to actually involve him in one of my projects.
A couple weeks later, she proposed to make a dance with me. The way the dance came together came from how I work and what I do at my job. One thing I do not like about the dance Cherry and I put together was the sweeping section. I found it hard to memorize, practice, and eventually get down. Another difficult section for me to learn, it is called Solos Olos. It was made in 1977 by the American dancer Trisha Brown.
So that one day, instead, I asked him to describe the tasks that he performs at his job. When he was describing them to me, he was using his hand gestures a lot. And these hand gestures became our raw materials. In this dance, we appropriated the structure of a duet made in 1981 by the Belgian choreographer Anne-Therese de Keersmaeker.
Awesome. So that was the little trailer for the piece. And Sherry, are you ready to go? Great.
Oh my God. So the film I also made a while ago. I made in 2019. Yeah. So Mathilde and we had collaborated on a different film earlier that year, which was called Lydia and Matthew. So in that film, I made a duet for Mathilde and another dancer called Lydia. And that particular dance was made throughout a 2-month period during which I had weekly, almost daily rehearsals with both of them and was gathering information from the two performers, and then we composed the solos together. So using the information that come from them. So the information meaning like they are autobiographical information, and then their movement history and the movements that they perform on a daily basis. So that would involve their dance training as well as the tasks that they perform at work. So after making the dance for Lydia and Matthew, in the 2019 in the fall, I was approached by a curator asking me to make a sort of performance version of the film. So I decided to continue working with Mathilde, and so that's how we made the performance that you just saw, and which then became a film again. So yeah, in this particular work, well, I would say one thing, this particular work is in continuation and in conversation with the previous film. But also at the same time, I think that, I was pursuing the similar line of question, but seeing what other gaps that sort of can open up that was not investigated in the previous film. So in the previous film, the two solos were 20-minute long each, and then it's pretty drawn out without conversation, without sound actually. Yeah. So in this film, that in performance that I did with Matteo, I really wanted to speak, and I really wanted him to speak. So we decided to talk, and then so the structure of the piece was sort of alternating speaking and moving, speaking and moving, speaking and moving, which meaning that there are little sections where we would perform, but there are also sections where maybe I am speaking while he is moving, or vice versa. So we are also each other's audiences at times. We're not always performing at the same time. And then so it was an opportunity for me to sort of look at the movement materials with Mattel from earlier that year, but also to add new sections from historic postmodern dance for both of us to respond to. It's in the sense of a choreographic exercise. Okay, that's as much as I have to say. Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions.
So I think this piece I included in the selection because when you're talking with Matteo about what he does at work, and the fact that you said that he was using his hands to describe. So I think to me, this was like really speaking to like embodied knowledge, and just about like how we actually have like memory in our bodies, and how like there's some things that we just learn from others that is not like probably who knows who taught him how to sweep, but the fact that he was having a hard time describing it, and it was better for him to like show with his hands. And can you talk about like the language that you two developed, or how that became like, was there a conversation about like Sherry, you're not doing this part right, or like that's not how I sweep, or how that became like its own language that you two were like speaking with each other?
Yeah. Trying to think, this happened so many years ago. I think that it was with every collaboration, it was a difficult one to start with, and then it took months to find some sort of groove. With Matteo, I think that, yeah, I was approaching it, as you said, I was approaching it in the sense of embodied knowledge, meaning I went in the project with a proposal and an assumption that whoever can do this this thing that's like work, or whoever can do A can also do B. That's my assumption. So I wanted to try it out with him, and then so he was up for it. And then some of the difficulties I think that we encountered was it's me. I have to figure out approaches that will work with him, and I had approaches in mind, and a lot of them didn't work, and which made me think, was I wrong about certain things? But in the end, no, I don't think I was. It was the right approaches that needed to be found. So what do I mean by that? Some people were more comfortable with improvisation or coming up with things that's not already it pre-existing, and he was not someone who was comfortable with that. So I had to restructure the approach to come up with movements. So for a while I was asking him like to show me a thing. I wanted to devise these exercises where we come up with variation of that thing, and it didn't work out. But it wasn't because that he's not willing to try or any, or like but it was all I needed to do was to switch mode into the mode of description instead of the mode of investigation or variation. So once we switched mode to description, he was completely comfortable, and it was matter of fact, as in, you know, it was very concrete. So and then understood, so he is the type of person who is comfortable with things that's concrete, who is comfortable with things that's specific. I think he's uncomfortable with abstraction. So once I realized that, it was smooth to move on from there. And then like, you know, the things that he started to describe, I can understand them as well. And then those become materials that we can both understand to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you two, it took a while to figure out the groove, but then yeah, you developed like your own language, which is what a collaboration should be. Awesome. Let's do a little cheers to Sherry. Cheers. All right, and then now moving on to Irene. So Irene Hua is an interdisciplinary Mexican artist. She works with sculpture, performance, video, drawing, and writing, thinking about cycles, decay, and processes of transformation. She has a bachelor's degree in graphic design and an MFA in painting and drawing from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. She has exhibited in a variety of collective exhibitions and has participated in socially engaged projects in Mexico and abroad. She participated in the International Visual Performance Arts in Karachi, Pakistan, and presented her performance Becoming the Insect. She showed her video Yesterday I Did the First Surgery at Green Gallery in Milwaukee, and Irene's show Smell of Awakening Soil was exhibited last year at Goldfinch Gallery, Chicago. I'm going to show a little bit of Irene's piece. I'm going to move a little bit into the video. So the piece, I think I skipped over like too fast, but you kind of get the idea. And Irene, do you want to talk about the piece? So it's called Espero, I Wait Until I Dry.
Yes. This piece I made in 2019. It's a long durational performance that I did in this space I'm in right now, in my house. I was thinking of constructing myself like a cocoon or like a, I don't know, like a second or third skin. At the beginning, like I just had that idea in mind, and then like what I was doing what I was like constructing on myself, like things kind of like started to transform. In the beginning, it was more like a caring ritual that I was performing for myself. Like the idea was like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna wait until I get dry and then be like transformed like a butterfly or something like that. And then while I was doing it, like it changed. It became a little bit intense in terms of like my body was, I couldn't move. It was difficult to stay like that for a long time. It was around 2 hours, the whole process. So it was I don't know, it was this experience of like putting on myself this oppressive like suit, that at the same time it was gonna be like a transformative like it was a transformative action at the end for me, for myself. I was thinking of the golem as a la golema, like as a figure that I'm interested in, that, as maybe you know, it's from Jewish mythology. The golem is this man made of mud that like it sometimes like it's from Prague, and it sometimes takes care of the people in the ghetto, in Jewish ghettos. But then Gustav Meinrich has this version of the golem that I'm very interested in, that has to do with like the unconscious, and the golem becomes this like this part of the self that is like it's inside of us, and it becomes like a kind of the other, or the part that is hidden away inside of us. So I was like exploring all of those ideas in this performance. I was exploring myself in a way, and I was very interested in the setting of the house as like, you know, like questioning like what happens in the house, what intimate moments can happen in the house when like no one is there, when no one is watching. Like, yeah, those ideas I was thinking about.
Awesome. This piece I chose because it really was sort of that duality between the interior and exterior. But also want to say thanks to Sophia, who was the one that actually introduced me to Irene. But yeah, thank you so much for introducing me to her work. And so this piece, I was thinking about it as that is really the embodying the invisible. Like, I think, Irene, you made like this transformation of a metaphor into like a real thing. And that what I was thinking about invisible labor, or just like invisible, just really making it apparent. And we talked a little bit about like sort of the fear you had when you were making this piece. You said that you were actually scared of what would happen, and that wait was 2 hours, right? And like sort of what was going through your mind, or just like, did you feel like a catharsis or like a relief when you were released of this? Because we were sort of talking about this embodiment of like both kind of being almost like in that waiting, almost as if you're going to give birth, but also in being wet, almost being like a baby. So you're both kind of being reborn and giving life, and sort of that tension between both. But were those things kind of going through your head?
Yes. Yes, I guess the waiting was very interesting, because I had to be like patient, and I'm not very patient normally, and that made me think a lot. It was like from the exterior, like blocking everything, you know, to go to the interior. I think at the end, yes, it was a very like cathartic process. I'm not sure if I have to build a cocoon in my skin again. Maybe, but I think definitely like it had this aspect of like this animalistic thing of like going out of like the skin, you know, especially like in the video we don't see this, but part of the process was like putting it out, like putting the skin out, and that was definitely like being reborn. Like I felt like a reptile or something like that. So yeah, like I think that it also plays the interior and the exterior, not just with my body and my my psyche, but also with the idea that like it was at home and like it's like the interior in the interior kind of idea. I think it's something also about like making art that is like you become the baby and you become also like the mother, you know, and everything is very like sometimes like painful and cathartic at the same time.
Yeah, I get you. Let's give a little virtual shout out to Irene. We can start our Q&A. You can ask the artists any questions about their work. And there's still 2 other pieces in the show, but you could also see them virtually. But that concludes the part where I'm asking questions. So I'm gonna leave it open to you all.
I have one question, and this is to Sophia. How was the transition after you stopped like making films and went into animation? And I mean, it's a big transition, and I was wondering if it was only the access to the cameras that triggered that, or there were other things.
There were other things. I actually was right out of high school. I went to the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn for. I went because I could go to an art school as an undeclared student. I wanted to see what I was good at. And right away, I fell in love with time-based art. So I was animating a lot. But then my mom got sick and New York got really expensive. So I planned to transfer back home, which is Los Angeles. Thankfully, Cal Arts is here. So I transferred to Cal Arts. I didn't lose any time in getting my BFA in 4 years. Out in New York, I guess I was susceptible to the experimental film scene. I thought it was just very cool and new, and it cracked my head open and rainbows came out. But I've always drawn and I've always loved animation. All my favorite films are animated films. But so it doesn't come out of nowhere. I love animation. And I think it's a workflow and process that suits me better. I burned myself out trying to do the live action side out here where I live. And it just didn't suit me or my health or even my living situation at the time. So the ability to be in one corner of my room for hours drawing 1 or 2 seconds of animation a day suited me better. I'm a very slow, lethargic person. Animation lets my doodles become the final product, I think, better than live action does. So to answer your question, no, it doesn't come out of nowhere. I've been drawing all my life. I love animation. I took a bit of a circular path to get to it, but I still love film. I still have a Bolex. I actually got commissioned to make a Super 8 film this year, so I'm like reminding myself of tricks that I learned like exposing the film directly and not using single framing and things like this. I was able to monetize my drawing way more than my film camera skills, so that had a lot to do with it too. I actually get paid to draw, and before this, nobody wanted to pay me to edit anything, so that had something to do with it, honestly.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Daniela. I want to ask a question. Thank you all for organizing this. It's really awesome to get to know the work of these artists. And I guess I want to ask Irene, Irene, if you want to talk a little bit more. Like, I was wondering if you have done more performances. I'm just like seeing your video and think a lot about the performances of Ana Mendieta, and I was just curious if you have done some type of this work outside of your intimate space, or if you are interested in doing something like that. Yeah, just curious about that.
Yes, I've done some other performances and performative videos that are outside, and they have to do with becoming an insect. And also I've worked a lot with the idea of soil. So yeah, like that reference of Ana Mendieta makes a lot of sense. The last piece that I did, like the last video piece, I worked with like a block of soil that I casted, and I like put it all over my body, like it moves from here to like the back, like the end of my back. Yeah, like I've been working with like subjects of the body and the material a lot. When it comes to like the performances that I've done outside, they're more like wanting to go to the trees and like I've made some suits, like cardboard suits, and they like I get inside of them, and sometimes like I've had other performers other performers do it. So we, you know, like it's like a personification more of those cardboard suits. Yeah, they're more like playful, the ones that are outside, less like, I don't know, dense.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all again for being here, and Francisco for all your work, and Ingrid, of course, for inviting me, and the artists for being here, and all of you. Awesome. The whole program, if you watch all 5 films, is about like maybe about an hour and 10 minutes. One video is like 40 minutes long, so but it's good.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, everybody.